Ever noticed how the moon seems larger when it's low on the horizon? It's not growing in size, it's a result of the moon illusion. But what causes this fascinating phenomenon? Welcome to the realm of celestial wonders, where we unravel one of the most intriguing optical illusions that has left observers puzzled for centuries: the moon illusion. This is the phenomenon where the moon, despite being a constant size in the sky, appears larger when it's closer to the horizon. Imagine a night when you're gazing up at the moon. As it rises, it looks enormous, almost as if you could reach out and touch it. But as the night wears on and the moon ascends higher into the sky, it seems to shrink, becoming a small, distant object. This is not some cosmic magic trick or a result of the moon's orbit. Instead, it's our own minds playing tricks on us. One of the key factors contributing to this illusion is atmospheric refraction. When the moon is low on the horizon, its light has to pass through a thicker layer of Earth's atmosphere. This atmospheric layer acts like a magnifying lens, distorting and enlarging the moon's image, creating the illusion of a larger moon. Visual cues also play a crucial role. When the moon is high in the sky, there are fewer objects to compare its size to, making it appear smaller. But when it's near the horizon, we can compare it to buildings, trees, and mountains, tricking our brains into perceiving the moon as larger than it truly is. The Ponzo illusion, another optical trick, is also at work here. This illusion occurs when our brain perceives objects of the same size differently based on their background. When the moon is near the horizon, surrounded by distant objects, our brain interprets it as being larger due to the context provided by the surrounding landscape. So now you know the moon doesn't actually grow in size when it's low in the sky. It's all a trick of the eye, or more accurately, a trick of the mind. One of the main culprits of the moon illusion is something called atmospheric refraction. Now, what's this all about? Well, when the moon is low on the horizon, its light has to pass through a thicker layer of Earth's atmosphere. This atmospheric layer acts somewhat like a magnifying lens. As the moon's light travels through it, the light bends. This bending, known as refraction, causes the moon's image to be slightly distorted and enlarged. So, even though the moon hasn't physically grown in size, it appears larger to us. It's like an optical magic trick played by our very own atmosphere. This is the same reason why stars seem to twinkle. Their light is also refracted as it passes through the Earth's atmosphere, making them appear to blink or twinkle. Atmospheric refraction, therefore, is one of the key players in creating this grand illusion. The landscape around us also contributes to the moon illusion. Consider the scene when the moon is high in the sky. It's surrounded by the vastness of space, with no familiar objects to compare its size to. This lack of visual reference can make the moon seem smaller than it actually is. Now imagine the moon near the horizon, framed by towering trees, distant mountains, or the city skyline. These familiar objects provide a scale, a frame of reference, against which our brain compares the size of the moon. It's a natural tendency of our perception to consider objects near the horizon as being farther away than those high in the sky. So, when the moon is near the horizon, our brain interprets it as being farther and consequently larger than it is. This brings us to an interesting optical illusion known as the Ponzo illusion, named after the Italian psychologist Mario Ponzo, who first demonstrated it in the early 20th century. The Ponzo illusion occurs when two objects of the same size are perceived as different sizes based on their background. Picture two identical lines drawn over a pair of converging railway tracks. The line closer to the point where the tracks meet, or the horizon, appears longer, even though the lines are the same length. This illusion happens because our brain perceives the horizon as being farther away and assumes that the objects near it must be larger. When applied to the moon illusion, the Ponzo effect suggests that when the moon is near the horizon, surrounded by distant objects like trees or buildings, our brain interprets it as being larger. In essence, the Ponzo illusion explains how the context provided by the surrounding landscape can alter our perception of the moon's size. So, the objects around us and our perception of them can significantly influence how we perceive the size of the moon. Our mind plays a significant role in the moon illusion. Let's delve into the psychological factors that influence our perception of the moon's size. Our brains are hardwired to interpret the world around us often using shortcuts or heuristics to make sense of our surroundings. This applies to the moon illusion as well. When the moon is closer to the horizon, our brain perceives it as being further away than when it's high in the sky. This perceived distance, coupled with the fact that we can compare the moon to familiar objects on the horizon, leads our brain to interpret the moon as larger than it actually is. Now, let's talk about the supermoon, another phenomenon that can enhance our perception of a particularly large moon. A supermoon occurs when the moon is at its closest point to Earth in its elliptical orbit, known as perigee, and is also in its full phase. This combination makes the moon appear slightly larger and brighter than average full moons. However, the difference in size is usually subtle and may not be noticeable to the naked eye. But when a supermoon coincides with the moon illusion, it can make the moon seem impressively large when it's near the horizon. But remember, the actual size of the moon remains constant. It's our brain, influenced by atmospheric conditions, visual cues, and psychological factors, that interprets the moon as larger when it's near the horizon. These elements all work together to create this captivating celestial display, making us feel as though we're looking at a giant moon. The moon illusion, therefore, is a fascinating blend of atmospheric science, optical illusions, and the workings of the human mind. So, the next time you see a large moon on the horizon, you'll know exactly what's going on.